Within the archives of the Yingliang Stone Natural History Museum in the city of Guangzhou, China, the air is thick with the scent of dust, aging paper, and chemical preservatives. Here, in a labyrinth of steel shelves, among thousands of catalogued boxes, time itself seems to have stopped. These corridors hold the bones of creatures that ruled a planet, long before the first primate dared to stand upright.
Great discoveries are meant to be forged in the field, under the punishing sun of the Gobi Desert, or on the windswept cliffs of Patagonia, with a pickaxe in hand and grit between the teeth. But this discovery, perhaps the most important in 21st century paleontology, happened here, in the quiet hum of an air conditioner. For 10 years it lay dormant, a single stone in a cardboard box, assigned an inventory number that no one had reason to check. It had been unearthed in the year 2000, pulled from the Heku Formation of southern China by construction workers who saw it as little more than geological debris. To the archaeologists who accepted it into the collection, it was an unremarkable concretion, a reddish, rough, elliptical boulder the size. Later arrived in 2015.
A museum staff member, conducting a routine inventory, lifted the box from its shelf, wiping away a decade of dust. He took the stone in his hands. The weight felt wrong. It was too light for a solid monolith, yet too heavy for a hollow geode. His eyes traced its surface, a weathered crust of sedimentary rock. And there, almost invisible, was a fracture, a microscopic fissure. Peering into the darkness of this tiny fault, he saw a glimmer of white. This was not the crystalline glint of quartz, nor the milky sheen of calcite. The texture was porous, organic. It was bone. In that moment, the researcher was holding the most perfect time capsule nature has ever devised. He was holding a biological bomb, its detonation poised to rewrite the textbooks of evolution. The revelation presented a dilemma. To break the stone by force was to accept a 90% probability of obliterating the delicate treasure within. To leave it untouched was to allow the truth to remain entombed forever. They chose a third path, one illuminated by beams born of light speed.
But a conventional medical X-ray would be blind to this secret.
A fossil is, in essence, a stone within a stone. The density of the mineralized embryonic bone and the rock that had filled the egg over 70 million years were virtually identical. A standard scan would reveal nothing but a murky gray shadow, a ghost of static. To read this message, they would need a light powerful enough to pierce not only stone, but the veil of deep time itself.
To see the invisible requires the energy of a star. Scientists turned to physicists, seeking access to one of humanity's most formidable instruments of perception, the synchrotron. It is a colossal ring, a particle accelerator of immense scale, designed for a singular purpose: to whip electrons into a frenzy, accelerating them to velocities that brush against the absolute limit of light itself. Within this maelstrom of energy, a fundamental truth of physics is exploited. As the electrons, traveling in a brilliant focused beam, are forced to turn by powerful magnetic fields, they bleed energy. They shed it not as heat, but as a blinding torrent of synchrotron radiation, an X-ray beam of monstrous brightness and penetrating power. This is the realm of hard X-rays, a form of light capable of discerning the faintest whispers of density in matter, distinguishing the subtle shifts from one atom to the next. It is the equivalent of reading a sealed book, its text revealed page by page without ever breaking the binding. For hours, the fossilized egg was bathed in this ethereal light. The scanning process was a marathon of patience and precision. In a nearby control room, the most powerful computers began their work, a digital chisel chipping away at a mountain of data. They devoured terabytes of information, a deluge of raw signals that held the secret locked within the stone.
A specialized algorithm began its delicate task, peeling back virtual layers of rock, digitally separating the encasing matrix from the object of their quest.
And then, as a three-dimensional model began to coalesce on the digital static, a form emerged. First, a spine, elegantly curved and flexible, composed of minuscule yet perfectly formed vertebrae. Then, the limbs appeared. They were thin, folded tightly along the torso, armed with sharp, hooked claws, poised to grasp at life.
Finally, the skull materialized. It was whole, impossibly, perfectly preserved. Vast eye sockets stared out from an abyss of time. A short, high, toothless beak gave its identity away. This was no mere skeleton. This was baby Yingliang, the embryo of an oviraptorosaur, a feathered theropod that walked the Earth in the late Cretaceous period, 72 million years ago. It was fully formed, ready to be born. It should have hatched within days. But catastrophe intervened. A sudden flood, a choking slurry of mud had entombed the nest, sealing it in silt. It starved the embryo of oxygen, killing it in an instant, yet preserving it in a perfect state for an unimaginable future. The shock that rippled through the scientific world, however, was not the existence of the embryo itself. Such finds, though exceedingly rare, had been made before. The shock was its posture. Until this moment, science had assumed dinosaurs in simply curled, its head dropped to its chest, its tail tucked in, a somewhat chaotic posture dictated by the available space. Baby Yingliang lay differently.
Its position was a complex, tightly programmed choreography, an ancient dance written into its very genes. Its back was pressed firmly against the blunt end of the egg, precisely where an air sac would have formed, a reservoir of air for its first breath. Its body was coiled into a tight knot, its legs drawn up towards its head. And its head was tucked down and sheltered beneath its right forelimb, its right wing.
The paleontologists exchanged glances of profound recognition. They had seen this 1,000 times, in a place far removed from the Cretaceous period. A modern poultry farm. The posture is called tucking. This is no simple posture for sleeping in a confined space. It is a critical survival mechanism, a behavior perfected by evolution. Just before hatching, the chick of a modern bird assumes this exact position, coordinating its muscles for the immense effort of breaking free.
In the silent posture of a creature sealed in stone for 72 million years, we hear the echo of a behavior that still animates life today. A single, unbroken thread of instinct, stretching from the twilight of the dinosaurs to the dawn of a modern bird. It is a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It is merely sleeping, waiting for the right light to reveal its secrets. It is a maneuver essential to the physics of birth. In the final hours of confinement, the hatchling performs a precise contortion, tucking its head beneath a wing. From this position, its beak is aimed unerringly toward the air sac, a small pocket of life-giving gas at the broad end of the egg. With a surge of instinct, it punctures the delicate inner membrane. The first breath. Lungs, dormant for weeks, now flood with air. The ancient system of allantoic respiration gives way to the new world of pulmonary breathing. Then, the true struggle begins. Using the powerful muscles of its neck and back as a lever, bracing its feet against the smooth, curved walls of its prison, the creature begins to rotate. It is a slow, grinding pirouette of liberation. With each turn, a specialized point on its beak, the egg tooth, scrapes and cracks the shell from within. Without this specific tucking posture, the maneuver is impossible. The hatchling would lack the necessary leverage, unable to generate the force required to break free. It would be unable to take that first crucial breath and would suffocate within its own cradle. Crocodilians do not perform this intricate ballet, nor do turtles.
nor snakes. It is a ritual reserved for birds alone.
Or so we believed.
The discovery of a fossilized embryo, perfectly preserved and nicknamed Baby Ying Liang, became the missing link in our understanding of how behavior itself evolves. It offered definitive proof. The complex sequence of actions we once considered a unique avian invention had, in fact, originated tens of millions of years before the first chicken ever walked the earth. Dinosaurs' dens, even in the darkness of the egg, were already running an avian program. The line between the fearsome Cretaceous predator and the common sparrow was finally, irrevocably, erased. We were looking at a carnivore from the age of giants and seeing a bird poised to emerge into its nest.
But modern technology allowed science to press even further. If we could see the form of the unborn, could we perhaps see the color of its world? For generations, both paleoart and science had painted a monochromatic picture. Dinosaur eggs were unassailable. Modern reptiles bury their eggs in soil or mounds of rotting vegetation. In the darkness, color is a useless extravagance. Why expend precious biological resources on complex pigments if no predator nor parent would ever see them? White is the default, the simple color of the pure calcite that forms the shell.
This assumption was challenged by a team of researchers from Yale University, led by Jasmina Veman. They employed a technique known as Raman spectroscopy, a technology that reads the chemical history of a substance by observing how it scatters the pure light of a laser. They were hunting for the chemical ghosts of ancient pigments. While proteins denature and soft tissues decay over millennia, pigments can leave behind indelible chemical signatures. In the fossilized eggshells of Oviraptorosaurs, close relatives of baby Yingliang, from the Heiyuan Formation, they found them.
Two substances were detected: protoporphyrin and biliverdin. Protoporphyrin is the pigment responsible for reddish-brown hues and speckles. Biliverdin provides shades of blue and green. They are the very same molecules that paint the shells of a modern thrush, an emu, or a quail. Analysis of their distribution revealed a stunning truth. The eggs of these dinosaurs were not the stark white of calcite. They were canvases of deep, saturated blue-green. Others bore complex, mottled patterns, a constellation of brown speckles across a greenish firmament. It was true camouflage.
This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about dinosaur parenting and nesting ecology. Color and pattern are adaptations for open-air nests exposed to the eyes of predators. It implies these dinosaurs did not bury their clutches, but guarded them, perhaps in nests built on the surface. The color of an eggshell, once a forgotten detail, becomes a window into the lost world of Mesozoic ecology. It tells a story not just of camouflage, but of care, a testament that the tender instincts we associate with the birds in our gardens first stirred in the hearts of giants, millions of years before our time. A pattern of spots, a wash of verdant green. This is not the uniform, chalky white we once imagined. This is camouflage. Such artistry serves a single purpose: to be seen, yet unseen. And it tells a profound story. To bury such a shell would be to render its camouflage meaningless. The conclusion, then, is inescapable. These eggs were not hidden beneath the soil. They lay in open nests, exposed to the sky, nestled amidst a tapestry of ferns, grasses, and the fallen leaves of a bygone world. But to lie in the open is to invite peril. A clutch of eggs becomes a beacon for predators. It is vulnerable to the searing heat of the midday sun and the chilling frost of the deepest night. The existence of such a fragile treasure implies a guardian. The deduction is absolute. A parent was present. A parent was brooding, using its own body as a living shield and incubator. This single clue reinforces a revolutionary idea. that many theropods, the fearsome lineage of bipedal predators, were in fact devoted parents. We are drawn back to the 1990s, to a celebrated find in the sands of Mongolia, the skeleton of an oviraptor, forever frozen upon its clutch of eggs. For years they called it Big Mama, but its very name, oviraptor, meant egg thief. The early interpretation, fueled by skepticism, was that it had died in the act of plunder, attempting to raid a nest. Now, that entire narrative is rewritten. The colored shells tell us the truth. It did not die stealing. It died defending. In its final moments, it was shielding its nest with its own body, perhaps against a raging sandstorm, warming the clutch with its own life heat, its own mantle of feathers. Suddenly, the black and white world of the Cretaceous floods with color. We see not just monsters, but parents. We envision nests filled not with dull fossils, but with brilliant blue jewels, guarded by feathered giants whose parental love was truly stronger than death. Yet the greatest tremor in our understanding would not come from a single fossil, but from two opposite ends of the Earth, the Gobi Desert of Mongolia and the wilds of Patagonia in Argentina. In the year 2020, the prestigious journal Nature published a paper that would shatter the very foundations of paleontology. A team from the American Museum of Natural History had turned their attention to the fossilized clutches of two distinct and ancient dinosaur lineages. Protoceratops, an early horned dinosaur and ancestor to the mighty Triceratops, and Musaurus, an early sauropodomorph, a forerunner to the giant. These eggs were profoundly strange. They were not shattered into the familiar brittle shards of limestone. Instead, they were compressed, croscopy, to probe their surface structure, and sophisticated chemical analysis to read their composition. The researchers hunted for a single crucial mineral: calcite. Calcite is the very substance that gives an eggshell its hardness, its rigidity, its characteristic snap.
They did not find it.
Or rather, they found only the faintest, most rudimentary trace, a whisper of a mineral, utterly insufficient to form a solid frame. The implication was staggering. The very first dinosaurs did not lay hard eggs. They laid soft.
For a century, science had held one truth to be self-evident:
that the secret to the dinosaurs' planetary conquest was the invention of the calcified, hard-shelled amniotic egg. This biological marvel, it was believed, protected the embryo from drying out, allowing them to leave the water's edge and colonize any environment, even the harshest desert.
That story, it turns out, was a myth. The hard shell was a later innovation, a sophisticated piece of biological engineering that evolved not once, but independently, a minimum of 3 separate times in 3 distinct dynasties: the Ornithischians, the Sauropods, and the Theropods.
The fossil record does not give up its secrets easily. Each discovery is a brushstroke, adding detail and depth to a canvas we once thought complete. We are reminded that the story of life is not a straight line, but a complex, branching river of trial and error, of brilliant solutions arrived at again and again. The ancient world was not simpler, it was merely different, and its deepest truths still lie buried, waiting for the light.
Nature's designs often echo across the ages, a phenomenon known as convergent evolution. But for the earliest dinosaurs, the very vessel of their lineage, the egg, dictated a survival strategy utterly alien to their later, famous descendants. Their eggs were not the hard, calcified shells we imagine, but soft, leathery capsules, permeable to water. This single fact governed their existence. Such an egg could never be left to the mercy of the open sun. Within an hour, the unforgiving heat would parch its delicate membrane, and the embryo within would perish from dehydration. It could not simply be abandoned, it had to be buried. Hidden away in the damp, cool embrace of the earth, interred in the moist sand of a riverbank, or concealed within a mound of decaying vegetation,
a natural compost heap where the slow burn of decomposition would warm the clutch, just as it does for alligators today.
This reveals a profound truth. The colossal sauropods, the ancestors of Diplodocus and the great titanosaurs, began their lives not in sunlight, but in darkness. Their first moments were spent in the damp confines of subterranean incubators. This strategy, born of necessity, rendered them vulnerable, shackling them to the humidity of the climate. And it explains a paradox that haunted paleontologists for decades: the mystery of the missing eggs.
For generations, scientists unearthed a wealth of bones from the Triassic period, the dawn of the dinosaurs, yet found almost none of their eggs. The fossil record was eerily silent. Only specimens from the late Cretaceous, millions of years later, appeared in abundance. The answer, when it came, was devastatingly simple. A soft, leathery shell does not fossilize. It does not turn to stone. It rots, decaying without a trace, its organic structure dissolving back into the soil that once protected it. Researchers had been searching for rocks when they should have been hunting for ghosts, the faint chemical signatures of decomposed skin left behind in the ancient earth. But within the fossilized fragments of those later hard-shelled eggs, a deeper secret lay waiting. Here, scientists sought the answer to the most heated, most fundamental question in all of paleontology. Were dinosaurs warm?
The key was unlocked by a revolutionary technique, a form of molecular alchemy known as clumped isotope thermometry. The principle is a subtle magic of physics. The calcium carbonate that forms the rigid architecture of an eggshell is built inside the mother's body from elements in her bloodstream. Within this process, heavy isotopes of carbon, carbon-13, and oxygen, oxygen-18, are bound together in the mineral's crystal lattice.
The physics are precise. The colder the temperature at which the mineral forms, the more these heavy isotopes tend to clump together, seeking each other out to form a bond. The hotter the environment, the more chaotically and evenly they're distributed. By placing a fragment of shell into a mass spectrometer and measuring the degree of this isotopic clumping, scientists could calculate the exact temperature of the mother's body at the very moment the shell alley being able to read its display.
Researchers analyzed the shells of agile oviraptorosaurs, the famously intelligent troodontids, and the gargantuan titanosaurs from Argentina. The results were unambiguous. They revealed core body temperatures between 35 and 38 degrees Celsius. This was not the ambient temperature of the environment. The Cretaceous world was hot, but its temperatures fluctuated with the sun and seasons. This was a stable, constant, internal heat. It is the temperature of a mammal. It is the temperature of a modern bird.
They were hot. Their metabolism was not a passive system dependent on the sun, but an internal furnace, burning bright and generating its own power. This single discovery rewrites our vision of their world. They were not sluggish beasts waiting for the dawn to warm their blood. They were dynamic, relentless creatures, capable of sustained activity, capable of hunting through the cool of the night. They could conquer environments once thought too hostile, colonizing polar regions where the sun vanished for months on end.
The evidence, locked away in the atomic bonds of an ancient eggshell, tells a new story. It transforms these icons of a lost world from lumbering reptiles into vibrant, energetic beings whose dominion over the planet was fueled not by the sun above, but by the fire they carried within. A world entombed in ice, where survival is measured in warmth. For the colossal dinosaurs, the secret to their global reign was not merely their size, but a fire within. They were warm-blooded. This internal furnace explains a profound biological mystery: how their embryos could grow with such astonishing speed. The evidence was found etched into the very fabric of time. An analysis of growth lines on embryonic teeth, delicate markers known as the lines of von Ebner, revealed a hidden diary. These are daily deposits of dentin,
microscopic chronicles laid down with the rising and setting of the sun, akin to the annual rings of a great tree. They showed that the incubation period for these giants lasted from 3 to 6 months. By the standards of modern birds, whose chicks emerge in as little as 21 days, this seems an eternity. But for a reptile of such monumental scale, it was an evolutionary sprint. The eggs of their cold-blooded cousins might lie dormant for a year or more, their fate tied to the whims of the ambient temperature. The dinosaurs, however, were generating their own timeline. But this gift of warmth came at a cost. It made them hostages to energy.
An embryo, burning with this internal heat, is a ravenous consumer of oxygen. Its cradle, the egg, could not be a simple container. It had to be a sophisticated life support system. Studied under the microscope, the shell's pore structure revealed itself to be a masterpiece of natural engineering, a ventilation system precisely adapted to a specific climate. In arid landscapes, the pores were small and few, jealously guarding every precious drop of moisture. In the humid wetlands, the pores were wide and numerous, allowing the developing giant within to breathe freely.
Our journey takes us south to the stark, windswept plains of Patagonia in Argentina. Here, near a place named Auca Mahuevo, paleontologists uncovered a breathtaking scene, a vast field littered with thousands upon thousands of fossilized eggs. It was a silent, sprawling nursery for titanosaurs, the long-necked sauropods, the largest creatures to have ever walked the earth.
Inside these stone spheres, each the size of a volleyball, scientists found a miracle. One egg held more than just the mineralized architecture of bone. It preserved an echo of life itself, an impression of soft tissue, the delicate fossilized imprint of embryonic skin. For the first time, we could perceive it was not feathers. It was a complex mosaic of fine, non-overlapping scales, arranged in a delicacy of their predatory relatives, were scaled from their very earliest moments of life.
But a far more startling discovery awaited, hidden within the embryonic skull. Using advanced tomography scans, researchers reconstructed the precise orientation of the eye sockets. In an adult titanosaur, the eyes are positioned on the sides of its 360-degree view to watch for danger from any direction.
The embryo, however, was different. Its eye sockets were aimed forward and only slightly to the side. This is the configuration for stereoscopic binocular vision, where the fields of view from both eyes overlap. It is the vision of a predator, essential for judging distance with pinpoint accuracy before a strike.
Why would a creature destined to become a placid, plant-eating behemoth possess the eyes of a hunter in the womb? This anatomical paradox gave birth to a bold ecological hypothesis. Perhaps the young of these giants lived a completely different life from their parents. The adults were slow, ponderous browsers of treetops, so immense they had no natural enemies. But their offspring were small, agile creatures, perhaps no larger than a dog. In a world teeming with predators, they could not have competed with their parents for food.
Instead, they may have been omnivores, or even facultative carnivores, darting through the undergrowth, hunting insects and small lizards. For this life, binocular vision would be essential, allowing them to precisely gauge the distance to their small, swift prey. This suggests a creature that underwent a profound ecological transformation during its life. It began as a quick, sharp-eyed hunter, and only through time and immense growth did it become the placid, grazing titan we thought we knew. The fossil does not just show us an animal. It reveals a life lived in two different worlds, a journey from hunter to hunted, a testament to the complex, shifting strategies that life devises to endure.
In the lost world of the dinosaurs, the young and the old were strangers to one another. They inhabited entirely different ecological realms, consuming different food, a profound evolutionary strategy known as an ontogenetic niche shift.
A hatchling did not vie with its colossal parents for the same resources. As they grew, these animals would transform almost beyond recognition, graduating through a series of environmental roles, from miniature predator to titan of the floodplain. And now, through the penetrating gaze of microtomography, we can see not only the blueprint of their lives, but the harrowing details of their deaths.
It is a death in the cradle. Within the fossilized titanosaur eggs of France and India, scientists have uncovered evidence of a microscopic invasion. The clues are subtle yet chilling. Tiny, perfectly circular boreholes drilled through the shell. Inside, entombed alongside the embryonic dinosaurs, are the fossilized cocoons of their assassins. An ancient parasitoid wasp, driven by a timeless imperative, would locate a dinosaur egg. Using its ovipositor as a diamond-tipped drill, or perhaps exploiting the shell's natural breathing pores, the female would lay her own eggs inside, directly into the living tissue of the embryonic dinosaur.
The wasp larvae would hatch into a world of abundance. They would begin to consume the small dinosaur alive from within. The embryo, still developing, its heart still beating, was a living nursery and a final meal. This is the brutal reality of the Mesozoic. The nest was no fortress. It was a banquet table for the smallest of opportunists. The largest animals to ever walk the earth could not shield their offspring from a threat too minuscule to even notice. This was not the only invisible killer. In another egg, the bones of the embryo show signs of pathological growth, a fossilized record of disease. Beside them, the petrified spores of a fungus, the infectant and killing the fetus before it could ever draw breath. We are opening an entirely new chapter in science, the paleopathology of embryos. And its first lesson is one of humility. It reveals that even the masters of the ancient world, creatures of unimaginable power, were utterly defenseless against the legions of the microscopic, the viruses, the fungi, the parasites that have always governed the boundaries of life and death. Returning to the now famous embryo, nicknamed Baby Ying Liang, tomography of its skull reveals another crucial detail, a tool essential for the moment of birth. It already possessed a full set of teeth, but at the very tip of its snout, on the upper jaw, was a strange, sharp, bony protuberance. This was the egg tooth. It is a specialized instrument still found in modern reptiles and birds, a single-use key to the outside world. The shell that had protected it for months was a marvel of biological engineering, a fortress of calcite. But as the time to hatch arrived, that fortress became a prison. To escape, the young dinosaur required a battering ram. The dinosaurian egg tooth was massive, robust, and when combined with the powerful neck muscles developed in the coiled tucking posture, it became a formidable weapon. With it, the hatchling could strike again and again to fracture its calcite tomb.
For many, this first great challenge was also their last. In certain fossil clutches, we find embryos with fully formed skeletons, forever frozen in the hatching position. They suffocated, or simply exhausted themselves, mere centimeters from freedom. The cause could be anything: a pathologically thick shell, a sudden paralyzing cold snap in the environment, or a simple, tragic lack of individual strength. It is a moment of desperate struggle for a single breath, a drama frozen in stone for 70 million years.
But why do we find these eggs at all?
Why did they not hatch? Why were they not devoured by scavengers? The answer lies not in biology, but in geology, in the science of taphonomy, the story of how remains become fossils. Almost every perfectly preserved clutch containing an embryo has been discovered in geological layers formed by catastrophic floods. A sudden violent surge of a river, a wall of mud and debris. For baby Ying Liang and its unborn siblings, death was instantaneous.
The very disaster that extinguished their lives became their salvation. The rapid burial by sediment starved the environment of oxygen, halting decomposition and protecting the delicate eggs from predators. Their final, silent moments, entombed by the very forces that snuffed them out, became their only testament, a fleeting tragedy transformed by deep time into an eternal story.
A torrent of water and silt, thick and suffocating, descends upon a nest. It is a sudden, final cataclysm, a liquid tomb that smothers all life and hope, cutting off the vital flow of oxygen. For the parents, it was an unimaginable tragedy. For science, it was a gift. The fine-grained mud encased the delicate eggs, cementing them in a perfect capsule of time. This earthen sarcophagus sealed them from the ravages of scavengers, from the corrosive touch of the air, and from the relentless work of bacteria. It was preservation born from destruction.
This was not an isolated event. Across the arid landscapes of the ancient world, other clutches of oviraptor eggs tell a similar, haunting story. Here, scientists have unearthed the fossilized remains of the parents themselves. The skeletons of adult dinosaurs are found lying directly atop their eggs, their forelimbs, nascent wings, spread wide. It is a posture of protection, a final, defiant act of shielding their unhatched young from a storm of sand or a creeping wall of mud. These fossils are not merely bones. They are heart-wrenching testaments to a parental instinct so powerful it eclipsed the primal fear of death. The dinosaurs did not flee. They did not abandon their unborn children to the encroaching doom. They remained, and they perished with them, a silent, stony vigil for a future that would never arrive.
When paleontologists began to assemble these disparate pieces of an ancient puzzle, an astonishing image came into focus. The posture of the embryo, curled tightly within its shell in a distinctively avian tuck. The colored pigments found in the fossilized eggshells, suggesting camouflage and display. The evidence of warm-blooded metabolism and the profound parental devotion. The forward-facing eyes, granting them the binocular vision of a predator. The evolutionary memory of their ancestors' soft, leathery eggs. All these facts converged, painting a portrait of an animal that defied every outdated caricature of a lumbering, cold-blooded reptile. We have long been taught a simple story of extinction.
That an asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago, erasing the dinosaurs from the face of the Earth, leaving behind only their colossal bones to gather dust in our museums. But as we gaze upon the fossil of baby yin-liang, a creature perfectly preserved at the moment of its birth, we understand the profound error in that narrative. They did not vanish. They changed. They underwent a profound transformation, shrinking in size, their bodies becoming lighter, more gracile. They cloaked themselves in a mantle of complex feathers. They mastered the sky. For 70 million years, the fundamental mechanics of their birth have remained unbroken.
Every chicken scratching in the dirt, every pigeon that congregates in a city square, every eagle soaring on the thermal winds, each is a direct, living descendant of the creatures who laid these ancient eggs. To look upon the fossilized embryo of baby yin-liang is to stare into an abyss of time, only to have it wink back with a startlingly familiar avian eye. The dinosaurs are not gone. They are among us. They sing in our gardens, they steal crumbs from our tables, and they lay eggs on our farms.
And so, an unremarkable stone, which lay forgotten in a Chinese museum storage for a decade, became the Rosetta Stone for this revelation. It became a bridge across the chasm of geologic time, connecting the so-called terrible lizards of a lost world with the harmless birds of our own.
Today, our tools for peering into this deep past are becoming unimaginably powerful. Scientists speak of the very real possibility of extracting ancient peptides, proteins, and amino acid sequences from the deepest layers of fossilized shell. Not DNA, the molecule is too fragile,
decaying completely in less than 1 million years, but the robust building blocks of proteins. These molecular ghosts could tell us not only what twerkings of their immune systems, the diseases they fought, the very biochemistry of their lives. We are standing on the threshold of molecular paleontology. We no longer need to break these precious relics with hammers. We can now look through them, as if gazing through a window into time itself.
Every untouched egg in a museum drawer is a potential revelation, a time capsule waiting for the right key. The hunt continues. And who can say what secrets the next egg will hold? Perhaps the embryo of a tyrannosaur, its body covered not in scales, but in the downy filaments of its avian heritage. Or perhaps a species entirely unknown to science, a creature that will force us to rewrite the story of life all over again. The great book of Earth's history is far from finished. Its most profound chapters are still hidden in stone, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read them.
The echoes of this story now fade, but the search for understanding is a ceaseless current. It is a shared endeavor, a collective act of bearing witness to the great and intricate narrative of our world. To remain connected to this unfolding chronicle is to hold a place on the front lines of discovery.
For history does not conclude, it merely pauses, awaiting those who have the courage to look closer, to ask the next question. In the vast, silent library of the unknown, the most important chapters are always yet to be written.